Welcome to the To a Kidney podcast from Advancing Wound Care, an online education platform for clinicians.
You're with Monica and Donna, two advanced practice nurses with decades of experience in hard-to-heal wounds, burrowing into prickly conversations. Welcome back to the next episode of the To a Kidney podcast from Monica and Donna from Advancing Wound Care. Now, the topic that we're going to cover today. Hello. Yes, I should let you say hello. Well, I'm chomping at the bit here because I'm a bit excited about what we're going to talk about. And Monica's laughing over in the background. We have thought very carefully about, because we don't, want to talk a lot about products so much, but we do, wound care, wound management is what we do, and we use products for sure. So we have titled this episode What the Foam. There's definitely a WTF acronym in there, and the C word, which is going to stand for two categories of products that we use, and they are combines and crepes.
Yes.
And we want to cover off on foams as well when they're used potentially inappropriately, or when we have kind of those aha exclamation mark moments, things that we see. Some of the harms that are caused when they might be inappropriate, not that they're necessarily bad products, but the same with the combines and the crepes, when those things are certainly overused and used in very inappropriate and harmful circumstances.
Yeah. And also the foam fights. This foam's better than that foam, which is better than that foam.
Now, did you just come up with the two Fs, the foam fights? Because that is actually a thing.
I know.
The foam fights, people lose their crap over the foams. No, this one's better. No, that one's, no, I like the orange one. No, I like the blue one. No, the beige one. Yeah,
that's foam fights.
That's huge. And also we wanted to talk about, I think when we were mentioning that a lot of the foams are packaged very similarly.
Yeah.
And a lot of the names, there's so many variants now with the same names, that can be a risk as well.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when the first foams came out, and it was very exciting because we really had hydrocolloids predominantly then that we had access to.
Yes.
And then the first foam came out, and then another foam came out, and suddenly the whole commercial world of wound management companies thought, this F thing's a great thing, let's put out a foam. So every human being and their dog, cat and mouse put out a foam. And that caused immense confusion amongst clinicians. And then, as you were saying, a lot of companies have the same brand colours and brand their product all the same way. And sometimes, there's a company that has a foam that's also impregnated with ibuprofen. Or not impregnated, impregnated.
Sounds good.
It's on the F theme, isn't it?
Yes, it's definitely on the F theme.
And yes, it has ibuprofen in it. That's the best way I can say. And
maybe it is. I don't know. Well, okay, let's just write that down on a follow-up list, because one thing we do is we have these questions and then we just have to know.
Impregnated. Oh, jeez. Okay. Go straight face. Yeah. So, so it has ibuprofen in it, and the packaging there are two foams.
Yes.
They look identical. They come in the same box, and yet the only thing separating them is the name of the company and the foam on one box, and the name of the company and the foam, and just three letters that signify what that foam is impregnated with.
Yeah.
It's a joke, but whatever. Yeah. So, and that causes confusion.
Yeah.
So there's foam confusion.
What about financial confusion? Because
I've
just thought of
another
that too.
F. Yes.
Because I have had a lot of people, I'm not saying in relation to that particular impregnated product. It's going to be the theme now. So we'll have to rename this whole episode. But, they've ended up with a box of a particular product because it's got a very similar name, and they haven't known which one to order. And oftentimes I have found too that the clinical staff in there, they might not be responsible for the ordering, and someone else has done the ordering, maybe not even a clinician. Could be a case manager or a
yes.
facility manager or the accounts person, all of the above, and they've ended up with the wrong one and they're using it and they don't even know and they're using it. But really, that has happened. I found 2 different lots of, three actually. No, 4 actually. There you go. It's growing. 4 different lots of ergo products being used on the same wound a couple of weeks ago. And yes, the packets are different colours, but the staff actually thought they were all the same product.
So what did you do in that situation?
Oh, I completely simplified, and it actually was not, the wound was not even appropriate for continuing to use those products. So there was a bigger issues going on with what I had available at the time. I was able to actually say these aren't appropriate to use any longer. We actually changed. It had so much confusion around it that I chose to just get away. They were nearly finished using the products anyway before they ordered more. I'm very considerate of the finances and getting back to the F word. They had run their course anyway, been using them for a long time. There was no harm, so it wasn't about picking out that. And they were very grateful for the clarification, and we just communicated to everyone that we're now not using that product, we're going to something else that had a more appropriate clinical rationale for how the wound was presenting. So I just did away with them all. We went to something completely different because there was a lot of different people who were attending the dressing in the whole picture. So there was a lot of other circumstances going on. And I think that's why there was a bit of confusion too, because there were people from different services. Someone was attending Monday, someone else was attending Wednesday, someone else was attending Friday. That is fraught with potential for confusion at the best of times.
Yeah. But even as you're talking, going back to the theme on foams, and, I was just looking up, there are foam fraternities, people who like it, we're discussing certain foams. And then you've got the issue where foams are considered a panacea, a cure-all for any wound. I think, and that's the biggest problem.
Yes.
It becomes, don't know what to do, we'll put a foam on. And I think what's complicated is the issue of prophylactic dressings and pressure injury.
Correct.
And I think they're becoming less and less favourable, because the bottom line is you still have to offload that bony prominence, especially feet, if you're going to put on a prophylactic foam dressing.
Absolutely.
And also then you've got the silicone foams, and people are putting silicone foams on lymphoria, and then you get foams slipping off and not performing the function that you need them to perform, where you actually need super absorbent polymer dressings rather than foam dressings.
Yep.
And the foam dressings cause more harm and more contact dermatitis, particularly on those very, wet lymphoria legs. So foams have become a bit of a bane of my life, because I don't tend to use foam dressings as much. I still have to, there's no question, but definitely less so than I used to. Still have a place in skin tears.
Very much so.
Yes. But again, you don't just put a foam on every single skin tear.
I can see how other people will rationalise and say, well, if the person doesn't know what they're doing and they've found a wound, it might be a safe thing to use initially. I've heard that argument. And yes, I can see that. But I think we've gone too far the other way. Like I said, I've just become that panacea. It's actually very hard to find a non-silicone foam in a lot of places.
And herein lies the issue.
Yeah, that's right. So people just become very familiar with it. And I will often look at them as like a lot of other dressings, and we're dealing with a lot of biofilm, a lot of exudate. That's quite damaging to the surface of the wound and the peri-wound. We need to get that fluid up and away. But a lot of these products, and they're great products, absolutely, are designed to keep the fluid near the wound and moist wound healing, of course. but there's too much fluid and they're quite easily overwhelmed, because I think historically too, they were all, before we had a lot of the more advanced super absorbent dressings, foams were always marketed as holding moderate to large amounts of fluid, not at all the large amounts of fluid that we routinely deal with. And we know so much more about biofilms now and what happens under them. So yeah, I would say the same. They've become the bane of my life too, in a lot of places. Again, I think there's nuances around what I describe as highly exudative is completely different to how someone else might describe highly exudating.
And different foams do perform differently, but I don't want to go to the extreme and start saying they've got no clinical application. In many instances, they've got clinical applications, but sometimes it's, as you were saying, that it's the first thing that people consider, especially in a person with a skin tear who's bleeding a lot. Don't bother put a foam on. Put a calcium alginate to stop the bleeding. Apply pressure. But they'll put a foam on. By that stage, you've got the epidermis that's separated from the dermis, but between that there's blood. Yes. And then people put foam on top of that.
But then you know what they'll come along and do? And this is a bit of a WTF moment for me a lot. They won't recognise that foam, it wasn't designed to be used that way. It's got silicone on it. But if it's not holding the amount of exudate, they'll put another layer on the top of it to absorb it. So they'll put the super absorber on the top, even if it's got a semi-occlusive backing layer on it.
So then it causes harm. So foams cause harm.
A lot of harm, a lot more maceration, and we get very wet. We just seem so wedded to these products.
Foam fantasy.
Foam fantasy. Yes.
And again, it's not so much the problem of the foam, it's the problem with the human being using the foam and not using it in its correct application.
Yep.
So that's, look, I'm sure as we talk, I think we'll come across more foam foibles. But what about the C word or the C words?
The C words.
Do you want to introduce that? Because it was something you said today that really got us thinking about it.
Yes, I had a referral which had said they were struggling with exudate management, and instead of putting the super absorbent dressing on, had gone for something more absorbent, being the Combine, and secured it with Crepe.
No.
Combine and Crepes.
For dramatic effect.
No. Yes.
But yes, we see it all the time.
And it really made us want to include it in this episode, because I do find that a lot. People are, well, we're struggling, we'll grab the Combine because it's highly absorbent. It's just highly cheap. And again, not demonising the product, but when we're...
Well, you won't demonise the product. I'll demonise the product.
Okay, you can demonise the product.
I don't think it has any clinical application in 2026 and beyond ever. Burn
the Combine.
Yeah, burn the Combine with the Crepe. No, I'm going to be...
No. Go for it.
Guys, as people think the Combine's cheap, but it's actually expensive because it causes harm, and then we get a referral.
It is just cotton wool in an outer layer.
Yeah.
That the fluid just wicks through.
But you know what? I remember when Combines were first... Well, I remember we started using Combines, and then we got... I won't mention the company because I don't know whether they still manufacture it. But it was supposed to be a really super-duper Combine, but it wasn't. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
Oh,
better
no. I think I've blocked it out.
Yeah.
I think it's vague.
And then Crepe. I see so much harm with Crepe. I see, Crepe is, yes, Crepe may be cheap to apply, but if it doesn't retain the dressing and therefore the wound doesn't heal, because even the dressing slips and you're often using a non-adhesive dressing, and that's why you're using Crepe. And if then it's just this comedy of error that occurs, and all because the Crepe is cheap.
We have a lot of problems with people using a very thin amount of Crepe bandage. So if it is appropriate for a Crepe, well, I mean, yes, there's different weights of Crepe bandage, but I'm talking about trying to put a 5 centimetre, or even I've seen a 2 centimetre crepe tried to be wound up a leg. I'm not kidding.
Oh, no.
Yep. When we're coming along and writing plans, like put the bandage or, from toe to knee, but they'll use a 5 centimetre bandage and try to cover the whole. It just doesn't work. Or ring barking a limb, crepe around and around and around and around. And clearly you've got lots of limb you can use it up on, but I think even the art of basic bandaging, I don't see it done well, and I do get very concerned even when we're trying to teach people to put on more complex bandage systems, but they can't even put on a crepe, like just those,
But is there a twilight period now between not using crepe and using more of the tubular retention bandages, tubular blend?
Again, we're often repeating ourselves. We're rinsing and repeating, not to apply it too short, not to mix it up with the compressive tubulars.
Yes, and that happens a lot. Here I'm saying a lot. Well, I see it a lot.
Yeah, we see it a lot too, yeah.
And then that becomes more expensive. Like we're going from crepe to using tubular compression, straight tubular compression.
The wrong size being used.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, okay, all right.
Yeah.
And so the only time that a combine's maybe good when you're putting a splint, someone's had an IV and they're putting a splint on, but even now they've got padded splints. So I'm just trying to find a good place for that C word to go. But I think it's got to go up into the clouds.
It's pretty limited. What about in skin creases? Skin folds. Now, I have seen that done, but I've seen that done very poorly as well. I think for me, it might be a little bit of a padding layer for someone where a super absorbent dressing might not be needed. But the minute there's too much moisture and it gets really wet, that's the time for me to say, no, combine is not useful.
Yeah, but then you'd use your super absorbents now. And also sore back dressings, because we can talk about sore back because it's a unique product.
So again,
putting sore back in between those folds, probably still more suitable.
Definitely more suitable. I often can't get it into places.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yep.
And why not?
It's a health economics discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, yeah, that would always be my product of choice, always, and more vigilant cleaning. But, I just know there are some people who will just use a little bit of combine, it will be okay. So I'm always going to struggle with it. And I guess I have, in my practice, I have found there are a lot of products I will say I don't like either. But, then again, I will come across someone using it quite well and their clinical outcomes are okay. I'm talking about the general population-wise, most people it won't be used well, but there will always be some people who are okay with it. So I just struggle with
benefit, isn't it, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the risks are greater than the benefits of one or two people using it well. I'm thinking more about systemic change.
Yeah, I'm completely playing devil's advocate.
Yeah, but it's good.
Because if we don't have cost-effective alternatives, so I'm not saying keep the combine or keep the crepe, but we don't have ready access to the alternative. So maybe we ban it and then people have to get them in. I don't know.
Yeah, what would happen if...
Yeah. Well, that's a good thought, isn't it? What would happen if they just magically disappeared?
What if procurement officers didn't know that a product like that existed?
What if people started? Now, I'm being completely ridiculous here, but what if we started putting riskmans and reports in for when harm is done?
Yeah, we don't do that.
Why do we tolerate? We're aiming for the utopian solution.
Yeah, but see, going back to what the foam and the C words, crepe and combine, I think governance structures that support procurement making clinical decisions that are often, of course, they're purely financial, is probably one of the most riskiest positions that organisations put themselves in. And so you are actually spot on. Start putting in clinical risk forms, whatever you have in your organisation, highlighting that to managers. Because with very quickly you develop a case series and a trend. When you think about it, you actually have raised a really good point. I don't think I've ever. Have I?
I think it's tricky. I am often conflicted when I see some harms being done and how I go about documenting that in clinical notes. As someone in private practice, okay, not everyone's going to be in private practice, of course, but we have a culture in my organisation that we do try to call a spade where we can, objectively and sensitively, because most managers where we go, they actually want to know what the problems are, and that's why we enjoy the places that we do go, because we can say this is what's causing harm, and they're very invested in wanting to improve practice and actually work out the real barriers, not just what dressing to put on or what the product solution is. So where we can help that quality process, the better. So yeah, maybe that's something that you tackle from a risk framework.
I mean, we've gone from what the foam to now clinical risk. It is hard. Like, it's all good and well for me to say, put in a risk, whatever process you use, software you use, but it's easier said than done. Because if, for example, I'm just thinking, I come in and someone's wound has, I saw it 2 days ago, someone had put a foam on a highly exudating wound. The foam wasn't managing the exudate. Now you've got a bigger wound because it's the wound edges just started to perish. And I submit a risk. I'm trying to be very generic with the terms I use.
Yes.
But I raise that clinical risk. But it's really hard for staff to be hurt and offended and taking it personally.
Yeah.
When really, could be related to the person prescribed the wrong product. But as you were alluding to before, that's often all that they have. And so then they bear the burden of decisions made well above them, taking the burden of blame for something that was way out of their control.
Absolutely. The blame culture is really significant. And we're very cautious of that. It's about practice improvement. I've just thought of something we really needed to have added to this episode. And I really love what you're saying about those decisions being higher, but I think it's hard for staff to appreciate that. We have the benefit of understanding those governance systems and procurement process and health economic decisions. A lot of clinicians at the bedside and on the floor don't. Yeah. But let's add skin closure strips to this conversation. Because as you were describing that higher level decision making, it reminded me of on a number of occasions where I've been asked to provide education in a variety of residential and general practice settings, and as part of the skin tear talk, it's about the role of skin, there being no role for skin closure strips and the evidence. And I've generally, I would say 80% of the time, had a really good, we have not used those here for years, but I've learned because of the 20% of times where I have had knives nearly thrown at me, if people could throw a knife with the way they look at me, and I've had to backpedal really, really quickly and take the education in a whole other direction to not further offend them so they can get some value out of what I'm saying, because they are so wedded to those products, and they're in place historically, but not because of their own fault, but they do take it on as like, you're criticising what we're doing here. I've no hesitation in banning skin closure strips.
Like, what about over a flexion point? Over a joint, over a finger?
I've no hesitation in banning skin closure strips in the realm of skin tears. I think where there are lacerations and other different types of traumatic wounds, possibly. But then here's my clinical argument would be, Well, if you have a good quality silicone foam, and we're coming back to the foams again, aren't there other ways to stabilise a joint?
Well, I haven't. Skin over joint. Yes, I'm just playing devil's advocate because that's
because that's often the argument I get. Well, but we need the skin closure strips to hold the strip down. No, the dressing's doing that really well.
And it also forces people to compensate when you've got a category 2 skin tear where you've got some skin loss. People try and convert it to a category 1.
By yanking that little skin across.
Yeah, stretching the skin across the deficit when the skin really can't stretch, and then you lose all the skin.
Yeah, yep. I've got a file of, well, I'm sure you and a lot of our colleagues do, of photos of grossly, and I mean grossly, malapplied skin closure strips that have caused harm.
Oh, yes.
But when do we put it in our risk forms for those? That's not on the tip of everyone's tongue.
I know, but that's really hard because, so I think culturally it's very, very difficult and really requires a conversation with a manager that you trust and that a manager who has your back, and that can get very political and icky.
So a lot of what we're talking about is even relating then to the crepes and combines is going to be in the same domain as that, isn't it?
I suppose then if you get together as a team as much as you can in these very busy times, but agree that you will be putting in clinical incident forms and determining from the outset that it's not about the person who applied the product, because that's all that they've got access to, but that you almost form a little pact to submit these clinical incident forms to put pressure on the manager to elevate and escalate the risk and then do something about it.
Yep. And that also being well supported by your clinical governance documentation being well in place and well communicated and agreed on first by clinically suitable, authors who write those policies and procedures. So there's an expectation that's already set and you have that to fall back on.
Not all organisations have that though.
No, but for foundational things like skin injuries, a lot of them do, but the bigger ones do. A lot of them will have access to shared policies.
And then I suppose to prove that the product, not the person who put it on, if a clinician has a formulary that they can choose from and they prescribe the wrong product, and if there's harm caused, well, the responsibility is more likely on that person. But if you don't have, you've got a minimal formulary that you can use, or dressing products that you can choose, and all you have is a combine to put on a highly exudating wound, and then that wound gets worse, well, I don't think anyone would begrudge you for putting in a clinical incident form. Oh, that gets very difficult because then I suppose if you've got to start explaining yourself, you may be asked, well, why didn't you escalate the issue with your manager? Yeah, it's tricky.
Yep, it's tricky. And we're not saying we have the answers. We've certainly gone down a road in this episode, in this conversation, that, started off as like, it's certainly serious for us, but there are really significant ramifications and implications. And these are they are seemingly simple products, but they have significant implications to the staff who use them and on wounded people and people at risk of wounds as well.
So,
all right.
In terms of summary of this episode, don't use combine. Steri strips, don't use. It depends. If you maybe have a skin tear over a knee or a finger, maybe, but really, again, you've got other alternatives. Crepe, if you've got any hard-to-heal wound, it really doesn't have an application, particularly if you've got a wound on the lower leg that you should be compressing, don't use crepe.
Absolutely.
If you've got a particularly poorly perfused wound, don't use crepe. You're more likely to cause harm.
Foams, if you're in a situation where you have significant exudate, maceration, leakage through in 1 to 2 days, it's likely not the product that should be being used.
Correct. And if you're changing a foam daily...
Wrong product.
Wrong product.
Yep.
Wrong product. But foams, and particularly silicone foams, they've really revolutionised wound management because they're much less painful to remove, and they do have a function. Some foams actually fill, minor deficits, or slightly fill in the cavities of slightly deep wounds.
They do.
So they perform different functions, but essentially they're not highly absorbent, and we've got alternatives to those products now, super absorbent polymer dressings. So yes, that's the WTF, the C's, and then you snuck in a little S word there.
Yep.
Anyway.
Fantastic, Mon. Great stimulating episode. I'm sure we'll reflect on this, where this conversation's taken us. So thank you very much for your expertise. And sharing,
And likewise.
Yeah, great.
Always enjoyable.
Absolutely. Well, stay tuned, follow along. We hope you're enjoying our new style To Echidnae Advancing Wound Care podcast. If you haven't popped over onto our website, please do sign up for our newsletter as we're planning educational resources for clinicians. Check the show notes and we'll probably put some links in below for you as well. Make your navigation easier, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Thanks, Monica.
Thanks, Donna.
Bye.
Bye.
At Advancing Wound Care, we're proud to stand alongside clinicians who lead with heart, curiosity, and a deep commitment to doing right by the people in their care. We are so grateful to have this opportunity to share our learnings and challenges with you. Hopefully, this episode has inspired you to keep burrowing down to issues that bug you. If you liked today's episode, follow and subscribe to the To Echidnae podcast on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. If we were too prickly, we'd also like to know. Reach out to us on our Advancing Wound Care socials, where you'll also find hints, tips, and resources. And for more value, join our mailing list on our website for our newsletter and to be the first to hear about online education opportunities. All our contact details and links we've mentioned are in the show notes below. We will see you in the next episode, and in the meantime, go forth, be curious, and burrow into some ant nests.
There'll be struggles, there'll be wounds, but that won't stop me 'cause